Bob Chapman was in Army intelligence. Bob Chapman had the biggest private newsletter till he retired. He came back. One of the biggest again, the internationalforecaster.com. Bob has been at one time the biggest private silver and gold broker, and we always enjoy having him visit with us at least once a week here on the Friday edition. Bob, before we get into the economy and the manipulation of gold and what's happening with the dollar and the stock market and the economy and the real unemployment numbers and the Federal Reserve being routed and that huge victory that's happening with it passing out of committee, they clearly have the votes to vote for an audit in the House with a supermajority. Before we get into all that, ClimateGate, your take on what we're witnessing, Bob Chapman.
Well, I never thought you'd ask because I've just done about 30 radio programs on it. And one of the things that I uncovered was that, and I don't know if you mentioned it or not because I just cut in toward the end, the CRU received $23 million in taxpayers' funds. Did you highlight that?
Yes, we wrote stories about that last week. That's just one funding group going to Professor Phil Jones at East Anglia.
Yeah, Phil is no longer there, as you well know. He's I guess his comment was it was so gracious of them to let me go. And I think he's extremely worried about getting criminal charges brought against him. And, of course, the university didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. The phrase was, I am so grateful to the university for agreeing to this. But anyway, it is everything.
And that's, for those that don't know, Phil Jones is the head kingpin for the UN over all the universities getting this data together. This is the head guy caught with Holdren and everybody else engaged in fraud.
Well, hopefully this will stop cap and trade and knock the Copenhagen meeting on its ear. And I don't know whether that'll happen because these people are so arrogant. They don't care what happens. They do what they want to do. But I think we got them on the run here, and especially with Congress getting into it quickly the way that they have. It just shows you how criminal these people are. And, you know, so we switch away from academic fraud to financial fraud. And the financial fraud, of course, is going on Wall Street.
And the same fraudsters from Wall Street are the ones, Kinley and others and Madoff, that engineered this and are working with Al Gore and others. Break that down as a segue into the economy.
Well, the whole thing is about taxation, and so is in Copenhagen. And they want to hit them on both of them. Taxpayers from Western Europe and the United States for about 20% increase in their taxation from each. So if you're paying 30% and 5% to the state and you get 40 on top of that, you're in for 75 plus all the little taxes. So it's pretty devastating, and it's really a tax enslavement.
It is, Bob. So much is going on with this. We'll get back into it later and take some phone calls. But where do you want to start? The good news with open talk by Senator Sanders and others of blocking the reconfirmation of the private Fed chairman, Ben Bernanke. The fact that, as you know, a week and a half ago, it passed out a committee to audit the Fed. It looks like the Senate may try to block it, but still, this is a huge success. Or the lies about unemployment numbers. Where do we begin?
Well, the unemployment numbers are to be expected. And the scenario today, and I don't know if Ted is coming on later, but he would have something strong to say about this, but the unemployment numbers are totally bogus. I'll show you the coincidence of events that happened last Thursday when Dubai was announced. And, of course, they picked that day because the American market was closed. And they did that so that the market wouldn't fall 500 points. It only fell 150. And it was managing the Dow Jones Industrial and S&P and NASDAQ indexes, if you may. At the same time, they had gold for $50. It came back to a minus 12. The following day, it went up, and then Monday the same. And then, of course, they came in today and attacked voraciously. They hit gold for $50 again like they did before. And they're not hitting the physical market. They're hitting it with derivatives. And they did the same thing with silver, but not in as big a way. And they have the dollar up almost a point today on the USDX index. This is all coordinated. The numbers come out. The numbers are phony. The Dubai thing, they knew about that for months. They just picked a date and coordinated all this together. And so what's going to happen? The dollar's going to go back down again because there's too many sellers out there. Gold and silver are going to go back up again. So it gives you a great opportunity to be a buyer when you wouldn't normally have this opportunity. And the stock market's going to start getting weaker again. And they'll paper Dubai over probably over the next several years. It looks to be that they're probably offside over there somewhere between $80 and $120 billion, which in the circumference of everything is really not a great amount. It might seem that it is, but nowadays when you have the Fed lending out $12.7 trillion, another $100 billion is easy to cover up.
Let me stop you for a moment because you're an expert on this and I'm not. We had Dr. Paul Craig Roberts on 2 weeks ago, who, for those that don't know, is a former editor of the Wall Street Journal, former head of policy, Department of Treasury under Reagan. And he predicted on air that the dollar in the next few weeks would go back up because of this reverse carry trade that they have to cover themselves. And can you explain that to people? And that gold would go down for a while but then go back up even higher because they can drive stuff down now as part of their manipulation, but they can't hold it down.
That's true. And we brought this out, you and I, in this program a number of times. They affect the market for a day or two or three, and that's it. And it's the same thing with the currency market. Goodness, they trade over $4 trillion a day in the Forex, of which probably $2 to $2.5 trillion is in dollars. And so you try to manipulate that market more than one day, forget it. And it's got to be a coordinated effort where all of the bids on the other currencies in the USDX are hit. And then that's what they're doing. They're not making the dollar go up. They're making the other ones go down. The other ones being the pound, the yen, the Swiss franc, the Canadian dollar, and the British pound and the Swedish krona. And so they just hit the bids on them. And that was what the $500 billion currency swap was all about 6 or 7 months ago, because the other 5 nations that were involved receive dollars, and they take those dollars and they go in and buy treasuries with them, U.S. treasuries. At the same time, the foreign currencies that were received by the Federal Reserve, they take those foreign currencies and they go in and sell them, making the foreign currencies go down and making the dollar go up. That's the game they're playing.
And that's what Chapman, you've said in the past, in the last few weeks, that's exactly what Roberts said. What's the time frame then for gold that's down $45 today? It's at 1,162. What's the best guess time frame on when it'll go back up and when the dollar's going to drop? Middle of next week?
Probably. And another thing, too, is for those of you who, and I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible, in the pits of the COMEX, there are what they call the commercial traders in both silver and gold, and in this case, they're the same players to some extent. J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, etc. And in gold, they have a short position, net, because they have longs and shorts at the same time, net of 306,000 contracts. And that's the highest it's ever been. A normal contract for the short position, for the commercials as they're called, is 95,000. So it's just about triple. And they're really hung out to dry. And so,
explain what that means in layman's terms on the other side as we break down the rigged market with Bob Chapman.